What if the one thing keeping you stuck is the way you think? Welcome to Change Your Mind with Chris Ashley, the podcast where science meets spirituality and mindset becomes your most powerful tool for transformation. I'm Chris Ashley, author of Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, trainer, speaker, and lifelong seeker. For years, I battled trauma, depression, anger, chronic illness, low self-worth, and the weight of old stories. Until I discovered how to rewire my mind, reconnect with my divine nature, and consciously create a new reality from the inside out. This show is here to help you do the same. Each week, we explore the intersection of personal development, spirituality, and science, diving into topics like healing, emotional mastery, entrepreneurship, resilience, and the quantum nature of reality. You'll hear powerful stories, gain practical tools, and real conversations that will help you change your perspective, get unshakable confidence, and live the vision your soul has always known is possible. Whether you're navigating a major life shift, building your dream business, or seeking deep healing and alignment, you're in the right place. So if you're ready to break through, take back your power, and create a life on your terms, this is your moment. Let's break free from the patterns that hold us back, awaken to who we truly are, and rise. Your transformation starts now. Everyone, welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast, where we explore personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm your host, Chris Ashley. I'm so excited for my guest today. She is phenomenal. She has an incredible story to share. But first, before I introduce her, a couple quick announcements. Head over to the links in the show notes. Not only will you find ways to connect with my lovely guest and myself, you'll also find ways to sponsor the podcast. You'll find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. You'll find links to my courses, free downloads, free masterclass, all sorts of goodies, ways to connect on social media. And as always, this podcast is part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. We are doing amazing things in the personal development realm. It's all backed by an amazing woman who was Tony Robbins' EVP of production for 18 years. So incredible speakers, incredible podcasts. Come join us. We're doing a lot. All right. I'm so excited for my guest today. With me, I have Theresa Bruno. So Theresa is a founder and designer for Jordan Alexander Jewelry. She has designed pieces for Oprah, Julia Roberts, Jennifer Hudson, Pink, and Michelle Obama, who named her a favorite designer. She is now host of the amazing Soul Talks podcast. Go check that out. Welcome, Theresa. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And just to start off, thank you for all the good that you're doing in the world.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. You know, we were just talking in the green room about just serving, right? It's all about serving and helping others and trying to make sure others can find some easier pathway out of all the trauma, right? Than we went through. Because you have an amazing story. Yeah, go ahead.
No, absolutely. You know, it's one of the things I think a lot about and I talk a lot about right now. And I'm not sure, I think you go through phases in your life, and as a young person starting a career, it's all about, your definitions of success are, it's titles, job titles, it's a car, it's a house, it's where your kids go to school. And then I don't think very many of us gets through without having some kind of really big survival journey.
Yeah.
And, I'm right at the 5-year mark of two big pivot points in my life. And what I have learned on the other side of it is, I think really why we're here is to take whatever our talents are, whatever our gifts are, our experiences, the highs and the lows, and turn it back around, and give it back out in whatever way you can. So that's what in service, I think, means to me at this point in my life. And it's probably a number one priority, I'd say.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that, and I love that that's where your heart's at.
Yeah.
And I could feel your authenticity through the screen. I'm like, you're the real deal. I love it. You have great energy.
Thank you.
So I always start my shows off by asking my guests what their origin story is. So what put you on this path to starting your podcast and wanting to be of service?
Yeah, as you announced in the bio, I had a really cool business that was kind of like a fairy tale. I was running a marketing business for about 17 years, and it's one of those things, it was just easy. Everything about that marketing business just was kind of golden. It was like a golden little business, and as sometimes I think we as creatives do, I got bored. And so here I am running this business and I have all these employees, and I spent a lot of time in LA filming commercial work. And so on the weekends, I would go to the jewelry district. I'm sure you probably know it. And just learned sort of over a couple of years how to create jewelry. And that sounds easier than just those few words. Those few words I just gave you are not at all what that 2 years looked like. But the long and the short of it was, because it's a great story, but it's a long one, is that I never intended to sell jewelry, design jewelry for others. I was designing really just for myself, and because I was creatively sort of bored. The long story is that I ended up on the front page of the New York Sunday Times section before I was even incorporated, and Mrs. Obama read the article and then wanted to wear some of the jewelry to a state dinner at Chile. And it was like, and her assistant, and I said, oh, okay, because I only had 30 pieces and they were all my personal pieces. And so her assistant had called my office, and I was like, oh, okay, well, she can wear my pieces. And she said, oh, no, time out. She cannot wear your personal pieces. Are you not incorporated? And I was like, I'm not incorporated. So my husband and I chatted about it, and I was like, do I really want to open this other business while I'm doing this? And so I did, and she wore the pieces, and then the bloggers wrote about it, and it went crazy at first. I had 30 pieces in a little velvet bag, and I've got 50 stores in 2 weeks wanting the line. There was no line. And I had a lot of work to do to learn that. But the press drove the business for the first couple of years, which was amazing. And so I did get to design for a lot of celebrities. I did get to be on, not me personally, but the jewelry, on covers of almost every major mag in the US and in Europe. And it was just a fairy tale. It really was, a really quick rise. And then, as I think, and this is something I like to take accountability for, and it is part of my spiritual path. I was running really hard, running 2 businesses, traveling all the time, designing 2 sets of staff to manage. It was a lot. And I had trusted employees, and, fraud was happening right underneath my nose, and I didn't know it. My accountants didn't see it for about 18 months to 2 years. And by the time we found it, there was, the debt was so deep, I could either choose to shutter the company, not bankrupt, and, weep my eyes out, or I could have tried to, keep it going, but I didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. So I did shutter that very beautiful, very amazing company. And it was really hard. I think as women, we hold ourselves to a really stringent standard when we are entrepreneurs, and when we do exactly what you're doing. You've got this podcast, you've got this book, you've got this TV show, you have all this stuff. And when we fail, and I say fail, no, it wasn't entirely a personal failure. My designs were great. They were in stores all over. People were wearing them. My failure was that I wasn't fully present. I was running so fast at so many things that I wasn't present enough to realize what was happening. So I do, I take responsibility for that. But I do think as women, I walked out of that situation, and it's taken me years to kind of unravel the shame that I was carrying, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've let everybody down. Who am I as a creative? Am I not good enough? I've let down my investors. I've let down all the stores who supported me, all the people who were, I just walked away from it so heavy, and just really not proud of myself. And then the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life happened just weeks later. My just best friend, husband, of 29 years took his life. And there was no ground underneath me after that. And, I walked into that tragedy already carrying such a sense of, confusion, shame. My life already felt upended, and then it was really upended. So the story is that, it took me a long time to climb out. And at about the 3.5 year mark, I went, I got to make sense of this. This didn't just all happen in a vacuum for nothing. And I've had to fight like crazy to learn how to survive. And I was really tentative about getting back out into social media, being in any way vulnerable and transparent about my life, because I was sort of holding all the secrets of our life, mine and my children's, really closely at that point. But I kept just feeling this true spiritual call to say, I couldn't find in my grief some of the things I wish I had found, that I had to sort of scrap up and learn for myself. And so I just wanted to share it. So I started a podcast, the Soul Talks podcast, and I've just finished a book. It's just gone to press, called He's Not Coming Back, A Tragedy Through Grief and Sorrow into Courage. Yeah, into courage and overcoming. But it's all been about, these awful things happened. I did survive it. And these are some of the things I learned along the way. And that's why I'm here.
Wow, that is quite the story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And I mean, I appreciate your vulnerability so much. And also just your humbleness along the way of it. As someone who has had a business collapse, not in the same kind of way, because of betrayal, also, I feel that heaviness. Like I know that heaviness that you're talking. It kind of reminds me of my mentor, Mary Morrissey. Do you know of her at all?
I don't, but we'll be looking her up.
Yeah, so she's amazing. You kind of remind me, your story reminds me of her a little bit. She had this like church, but it was like a spiritual center, and it was doing amazing. And then all of a sudden she found out that her husband at the time had committed fraud, or like, there was something going on, and she lost everything. He went to jail, she felt the same way, let down all the investors, all of that. And then she built another multi-million-dollar business, her coaching business, paid all the money back, and is thriving. And I only bring that up because it takes a certain kind of person with a certain kind of mindset to build two amazing businesses. And you're saying, and you're totally like not taking the personal credit. You're like, oh yeah, it was an easy business. The press did it. It came to me, like, but that was also you, right? There is something incredible about you. And, I believe in like law of attraction and magnetism and determination and perseverance. And there's something about you that was able to be so successful twice. And there's something amazing about you that you've gone through the worst heartache that anyone could imagine going through. And you're like, I'm going to share my story now. Like, I'm going to rebuild this. So I just like, I see that in you, that incredible like power and strength. And I don't know, I commend you for it. And I imagine like telling that story is so hard. And I can't imagine going through one heartache right into another. It's like dark night of the soul, right? When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, spirit jerks you up pretty hard. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is this happening? What do I need to do to ground my life and my children's lives again? Get real quiet and really still. And thank you for all your kind words. You are just way too generous and gracious. I would say to your listeners, I think in some of the things you said a lot, but you said a lot of spiritual principles in being kind to me, because yes, I have had several successful businesses. I hope to have another one that I'm building right now. I think so. I think so much about how our thoughts create our lives. And I try to teach that because, that's a simple little sentence. Our thoughts create our lives, but they really do. So, I know you have worked so hard in manifesting and teaching others to manifest, and how we journal into what we really want. And so I would really encourage your listeners to dig deeply about the thoughts you're thinking. Are you sitting down at night before you go to bed, and are you saying, "Hey, thank you, God, thank you," or whatever, whatever the God of your understanding is, saying, "Thank you so much for this day. I'm blessed to be here one more day. What is it that I want tomorrow? What is the goal for tomorrow?" And putting really positive, not just positive thoughts, but just putting your energy into it. And then I love to do this exercise. I do it every night where I'm just inviting, I like to say I'm inviting the Christ consciousness within. And I ask to be taught while I sleep.
Mm.
I say, teach me what I need to know while I sleep. Teach me my truth, what you want my path to be. And I'm here. I'm ready to do that. And then I get up in the morning and again, invite the Christ consciousness within, and I begin to write. What is it that I learned when I slept and dreamt? What was I taught? And, how can I just live this day in a way that, as Maya Angelou said, I like this day. I've never seen this one before.
I love that.
It's like, oh, you're right. Every single day. We haven't met this one before. We don't know what it's going to hold. But I do think our thoughts help create our lives. Now we have to, I really believe, like you said, we have to have determination. We have to have discipline. We have to have action with it. But thinking about what you want in a very positive way certainly helps create our dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you asked to be taught while you sleep, because we're literally connecting back to source energy and our guides and everyone helping us on the other side, and to be intentional about where you're going during that time or what you're doing, and then to journal on it in the morning. What a great practice. I might have to steal that one.
You can steal it. I've had some great mentors in the last 5 years who've taught me tremendously. I took a page from Tracy Clark on that, and she's just a fabulous spiritual teacher and mentor. And she taught me to do that, and it really just opens up the heart to, divine understanding as we sleep.
Yeah, I love that. So let's go back to the dark night of the soul. So, I mean, I have to ask, did you see it coming with your husband, or was it just like total blindside? So, okay, you're in this horrible place, super dark. Like, how did you start to come out of that? Like, what did that process look like? And I totally get it takes a long time, but like, what are some things that helped you along the way?
Yeah. Well, I didn't see it coming with my husband, and I think there were several factors. I definitely was just about as down as I could be from shuttering the business. So I was probably not picking up some cues. He had been in I would say, a low-level depression for about a year after his dad had died. And, I think questioning himself as a business person, things weren't going the way he wanted it to. But I had no idea. I think COVID was announced on March the 12th. And we were only 1 month in. James died on April 19th. So, the whole world was just crazy. We were suddenly running our businesses via Zoom. We were all isolated and not even knowing what was going to happen to us as a civilization. It was a crazy, crazy time. So I didn't see any signs that made me think anything could happen. And we were such a, he used to say, we're peas and carrots. We kind of did everything together. And even in that month leading up to his death, with COVID, I would try to finish my Zoom calls at 4:00, and he would have things ready, snacks and water, and we would run over to this beautiful mountain trail near our house and spend the last, hour and a half of the day together and hiking. And we were doing that every day. I didn't see anything. I just didn't. But, I would also say this to your listeners. And I've learned a lot the last 5 years about suicide. I think one of the things is that we always ask why, and why didn't I see it? And what could have I done? What could I have done? And working with so many counselors, even grief, master grief coach and psychotherapist last week, Dr. Katie Eastman, she said, you never get the answers to the whys with suicide. You never fully understand or get it. So no, I didn't see it coming. And then your question about how did I begin to climb out? And yes, I would also say to your listeners, I think we all have to experience grief, whether you've lost a business, lost a parent, a loved one, a child. I mean, even losing a pet. We go into really deep places of grief, and we all experience grief differently. And looking back, a lot of people tell you what you should be doing. Oh, you've got to get up every morning and you've got to do this, and this. Oh, you have to be seeing people. You can't isolate. And I would just say to everybody, do what your soul and your body tells you to do. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to eat, eat. If you don't want to eat, don't eat. If you need to be by yourself, fine. If you need to be with others, and I learned a lot about that as well. The early days, the first weeks, I gave myself 2 goals, and this sounds probably ridiculous, but I would say to myself, okay, if I'm very drawn to nature, I'm very grounded in nature. And we had this beautiful view out our bedroom window. And I would say, if I can just make myself open the drapes, I will at least see something that's beautiful, and I'll have a little turn of gratitude. That was the thing, number 1. And the second thing was putting on my robe and walking down the hallway, making my coffee, which seems like nothing. But when you feel like there's absolutely no ground underneath your feet, you can't even figure out how to turn on the coffee pot in the first few days. Everything's messy, really messy inside you. So my goals early on were just so simple. Can I open the drapes? Can I get out of bed and make coffee? I tell the story of, I've always been a person who just really believes in gratitude. And we all talk a lot about it in our culture today. And what happened in the turn for me was I became I created sort of a rebellious gratitude. Like, it was like, oh, I'm going to be grateful for something just so this grief won't kill me, it was a backwards kind of way of looking at gratitude, but it was kind of those first steps out of just, well, I'm just going to be grateful just for any old thing, because then for just 1 second, I'm not feeling grief. But it worked. It became a pathway, and then I learned to really shift a little bit, instead of constantly just grieving the loss of him. And I have 2 beautiful boys, both in their 20s at the time, and they were both very close to their dad. I was determined that they would see me recovering, even if I had to go back in the bedroom and sob my eyes out for hours. I knew whatever I did was probably what they would mirror. And I wanted them to see a mom who was like, okay, this is horrific, but we can still be a family without Daddy. We're going to take with us all that he taught us and all he gave us, because he was truly the kindest man I've ever known. And so those, my children really helped my survival a lot. And then I wanted to hold on to the goodness of this man that I thought was truly one of the greatest men who ever lived. And I'm not trying to deify him, but anybody in our circle, friends, family, would say he was just really generous to a fault, kind to a fault, very much about everybody else and not himself. And I think in the end, that probably was some of what happened. But I really wanted to hold on to all that James gave me in life. And so the grief kind of became mixed with, how do I turn it? How do I hold on to this? What would he want me to do? How would he want me to go forward? And I talked to him. I talked to him constantly. I wrote to him, every Saturday. I wrote him a love letter. He died on a Saturday. And so weekly for months, I wrote him a love letter. And somehow all those things kind of began to help me find little baby steps towards some courage, towards some resilience, but it didn't happen fast. I didn't feel like I was really anywhere for about the first year and a half.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It again just it speaks to the fact that like you knew what would help your soul, even if it was just opening those windows and seeing the view, or just writing the love letters. Like that's so beautiful. Do you still feel connected to him? Like, does he visit you ever?
Yes, all the time. As I pray every day, I always ask him into my world, into the day. I ask him to work with the boys and help them. I ask him to show me things. How should I do this? What should I do about, selling the house? What is it that, and I feel his presence all the time. And I often feel like, this is a very vulnerable point I have never shared. I often feel like he holds my hand at night.
That's really sweet. And I was just like the other day, I'm part of so many like proof after life groups, and I was just reading a thread about someone was like, do you ever feel like your loved ones touch you? And so many people were saying that, like, oh, they rub my back, they hold my hand. So yeah, he's there with you. He's absolutely there.
Definitely now a spirit guide, and I invite him in every single day.
So what did you do in terms of like your work? Like your business was gone. Like, how did you pick up there?
Well, that was one of the things I'm sure that helped me heal, but COVID made everything weird. So I was still running that marketing company.
Okay.
And I still had employees and I had clients, and marketing is so deadline driven. So I had to show up for those employees, a lot of whom were relatively young women and men, but marketing tends to have a lot of 20s and 30 somethings. And I knew they were also really watching and learning. I knew that their lives would be impacted either positively or not by how I handled it. So I kept the marketing business going, but I sort of lost all my zeal for it. Accolades and success and great campaigns and clients being thrilled over the moon began not to mean what it once did. So at about the two, and I was having this pull, I was just having this spiritual pull that I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was something else in life that was calling me, but I hadn't put any kind of framework around it. I wasn't thinking podcast or book or anything. I just knew something was pulling me away from the way I had always done business, the things that drove me to be so determined, to do it big, to take risks. Those things shifted when James died. So I closed a very successful marketing business, which you don't usually hear that story, at about the 2.5 year mark. I worked with another agency. I knew their president well and worked with my clients and shifted them over to other agencies, made sure every employee I had a job, somewhere to go, and just quietly closed that 17-year-old business.
Wow. I love that you took care of everyone first. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have done it otherwise, because look what they'd done for me. It wasn't their choice to close that business, it was mine. So it took a little while. It took a little while to kind of formulate. I did realize in about the 1.5 years that I wasn't doing any true work, that I'm not good at it. I love to be still, I love to meditate, I love to pray, but I need purpose. I need to be and it doesn't have to be necessarily about money, but I do need purpose to be doing in the world, something that I feel is meaningful.
Yeah, I relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most humans
Yeah.
relate to that. So then you started the podcast right after that? Is that how the trajectory went?
I mean,
Cool.
it took
That
a
was
little.
pretty recent. That was like a year ago, right?
The podcast came out on February 14th of last year. We're at the 1 year
Two,
mark. Woohoo!
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, and of course it was dedicated to James. It probably took me 6 months of writing, thinking, wanting to make sure I had at least really worked out my thoughts enough to talk about them. And the way I do that is to write and to think. And then, I started kind of going, oh, what do you call it? And, how are you going to do this? And do you really feel like you've got enough of a platform to get out there and do something? And so many people have been so encouraging and helped. And it's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, I love it. And it just reminds me of when you take a step in the direction that you're meant to, opportunities come your way, right? The right people find you, right? Like,
Yeah. One
yeah,
person connects to another person, connects to another person, and it's just really beautiful.
yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm sure you probably experienced some of this too. So I started out, first to kind of unpack my own survival story and be as transparent as possible about it. Snot cried on camera, which is just beautiful. But then the second, tier was, okay, I want to invite others in to tell their stories. And for me, what I totally didn't expect about this journey was that every time I helped somebody else tell their story, because a lot of times I think anybody surviving anything needs to talk about it, needs to share their pain, but they kind of need a catalyst. They need somebody who's sort of pulling it out. And so if I would interview people who had survival stories, I knew it was good for them, but it was even better for me. I feel like I'm the one who got the gift because I have healed faster doing this podcast than in any of the 4 years before.
That's incredible. Do you think it's just because of the catharsis of talking about it or the inspiration of hearing other people go through it, or just like even camaraderie is the wrong word, but like this idea that like we all have a story, we all go through things, like we all have these life paths we're on. Like what about it do you think was so healing?
All of that, because you get outside yourself. You're not just always thinking about your pain, your story, how bad it is, because somebody's in front of you telling you, I was raped as a 13-year-old or I lost my childhood. I mean, there isn't a week that goes by, that somebody doesn't message me and say, my husband killed himself last week. How do I get through this week? Or I lost my daughter a year ago and I'm still not okay. And being able to talk to people who are suicide survivors, I didn't know where to go with that because first of all, our culture, we don't have a language for death. We don't have a language for grieving or space. We don't give ourselves space for grief, but we certainly don't talk about suicide. And it's been so validating to me how many people have needed me to say, these are the things I did. Do this today. Do this for a few weeks. Contact me back if you need me. That's been very validating and gave my life purpose. I think the other piece of it that is so healing, I've just fallen in love with the resilience of the human spirit over and over again with these stories I get to share. And we all need somebody. I feel like we need somebody to champion us, yes. But more than anything, I feel like as we're surviving anything, we need somebody just to sit in it with us, not to have the answers, not to try to fix it, but to be willing to be brave enough to sit alongside us. So those are the places that have just been gorgeously healing for me.
Yeah, that all makes sense, and it's beautiful. And yeah, humans are resilient, right? We come here and for a short time and we go through tremendous triumphs and low lows, and somehow we all make it out okay, right? So Did you have any spiritual beliefs or like a belief in the afterlife or what happens after that also kind of helped you through it at all? Or has that changed since your husband
Mm.
passed?
I came from, I like to say, a religious family, but not a spiritual family.
Mm.
And as a little girl, I was not in a happy home, and so um, there was a guardian angel over my bed when I was little. And I remember having an awareness at about 3 years old. She was so pretty. She was in like this long pink thing with some gold in it. And as a little girl, I would sit there and pray to her, thinking that she would help, quiet the angry voices in the hallway, or she would help get me through. So early in life, not at all like the way my parents went to church, my aunts went to church. I started this intense prayer life. And as a little girl, 8, 9, 10, lived in a small town, and I would walk that town over and over and over again, just praying and praying, God, help me, show me a way, help me find a way out of this. This is really rough. But I had a prayer life. And I just, from that angel, always I believed in a life after this. I believed in a spirit world. And there were so many miracles, little and huge, in my life along the way that played it out, that built this spirit life. You go through your teenage years and early 20s and you question everything, and you don't know what you are for a while, because you want to be smart and you want to make sure your belief system is, it lines up with exactly who you are and your value system, not your parents and not anything else. And I went down all those paths of questioning, but I've never I've never questioned the belief in the divine. I've never questioned a belief in that there is a life after this. I have never questioned that there are angels and guides around me helping me every day. So when James died, yes, I was angry. Yes, I was like, God, where were you? Why didn't I know? I was angry, and I was also, it was probably when I felt God the most.
Mm.
I felt held through that dark night. I was a mess, but I never felt that there was a lack of the presence of any, an eternal force, an infinite source. And I was just pulling on it for everything I had, saying, help me get through this, help my children. So yeah, belief, faith, prayer has always been easy.
I love that you felt held even in that really dark time. It's almost like that feeling of like, hey, I've got you, and I'm putting you through this thing, but like I know that you're gonna be okay. Like I know that you're gonna survive this.
And I don't in
I
any way mean to sugarcoat it or like put a ribbon around it, because it's so messy and hard and raw. But it was almost like I could talk to the God of my understanding more than I could talk to another human. And I did feel like I was tethered, that I was going to ultimately get through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another part to your question. I do want to answer that. What I was feeling pulled at in those, when I went back to work and just tried to get back in the whole old grind of running a business, and I kept feeling pulled over here. James' death, and even the loss of that business, but not nearly in as huge a way, but James' death has sent me on a spiritual path that is unlike any I've been on before. And so, yes, it's like it created a new awakening. It created a surge. And I've sought hard for that. I've worked so diligently and hard to have a deeper understanding, to find new tools. And so that's been something that came out of his death that's now just it is what my life is about for the most part.
And what was the most important thing you think you found in that search?
Gosh, really good question. Oh, I don't know if I have I don't have an elevator speech on it. You know what? I think
Well, that's good. We don't want elevator speeches anyway.
I think I found that I could have peace and I could have joy, even though I wouldn't, there wasn't happiness. I think 5 years later, the thing that I feel like is kind of tattooed on my forehead is I feel a sense of freedom in the world, and it's a freedom I think from a lot of the things that my life probably was about before all of this, like a perfectionist mentality, judgment, self-judgment, judgment of others, success, always striving. I'm in a really different place than where I was, and there's such freedom in letting all of that fall away.
I really love that because, so many spiritual teachers that I follow, even like Dolores Cannon's hypnosis subjects and people who've had near-death experiences say, and I believe this, say that we're in this school, right? Like everything we go through is an opportunity to learn and grow and kind of level up in your cosmic education. And I didn't want to be like, well, what did you learn from this? But I love that things that may not have been serving you have fallen away because of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's like your own soul evolution because of it.
You're exactly right. And I'm just, my sister has this wonderful way of saying, when you're on a journey like this, it's kind of like climbing Mount Everest. And I feel like 5 years in, I'm at base camp. I can see, I can see the peak up there. I'm not where I was before, but my journey is just, I'm sort of just at base camp. But yeah, it's absolutely a soul evolution.
So what's next? What's next for you?
I don't know. I'm just following this path that's in front of me. I am loving doing the podcast. I'm loving getting to do things like today and interface with people like you who are spiritual seekers, who want to help others, be in service with what we've learned. I did just finish a book. It will be up for pre-sales on Amazon by the end of March. He's Not Coming Back. My journey through tragedy and sorrow into courage. But I can't say that I know exactly what's going to come next. I'm just working at these things and leaning hard into friendships. Some fall away, as I think we all know when you go through tough times. But I like to call them my kitchen cabinet, my group of friends who will sit in the kitchen with me, and I kind of run everything I do past them, and they have held me up when I couldn't hold myself up. So I lean really hard into my friendships, lean hard into my children. And that's where I am.
It kind of seems like trusting the process, and it's like we were talking about earlier with your other two businesses. You took steps and the right people were there and the right opportunity was there. And it seems like you're really good at that. And that's something that a lot of people work really hard for, right? To get those opportunities. Like they kind of like fight through matter to get the opportunities, and you're really great at like manifesting them through energy. So I have no doubt that amazing things are coming in your future. You're taking steps in the direction that your heart is pulling you. So I'm excited. I'm excited for your book to come out, and excited to see what else is coming.
And it was really hard to write, but it also helped me define a lot of what I'm thinking about and how I've changed. And so that's been good for me. And the whole point of it is, I hope it's good for someone else. I hope it's helpful. But yeah, I'm very excited for what's next. I have just this
bubbly sense of excitement and happiness about life in general right now.
Good.
Yeah. And so I'm just, I ask for truth all the time. What is my truth? What is the path that you want me on? And, sure, I veer off from time to time, but right now I really feel so solid in doing this. That bubbly, energized sensation is the best. And that means you're following your heart, right? That means you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to leave listeners with that like we didn't touch today? Anything you really want to get out there into the world?
Yeah, I thought about it. I was having a little spirit check earlier in the interview when we were talking about some of the ways I walked out. I would say to your listeners, I really believe that when we share our pain, it lessens its power.
Mm.
And one of the things that I did wrong in my first couple of years was I really isolated. I didn't want to share the secrets of what happened. I had all kinds of shame. I didn't want to talk about it. I was mad. But what I have learned is that the more we share, and it's trusted people, it's not like, just running out and telling everybody about it, but if you have friends or family whom you really trust with your heart, with your absolute vulnerability, share your pain. And I think it's just amazing what happens. It's almost like, throwing the rock in the river and you see the ripples out. It's like every person kind of takes a little bit of your pain for you. And if I could leave anything, I would just encourage everybody in any struggle that you're in to find that safe place where you can share.
Yeah, I think so many people will relate to that. I know I do. That idea of like when things really fall apart, just wanting to like curl in on yourself, and shame is real. Shame
And
is a real thing.
and it will
Um,
your
and anxiety and fear and guilt and like all of that is so heavy, and sometimes it's really hard to get. It takes a long time to get to that place where you can kind of come out of your shell. But I love what you said, like sharing pain takes away its power, because it's so true.
It does. And I didn't know
Yeah.
that, didn't realize it because I was so ashamed and so embarrassed at so many things. And
Yeah.
I didn't have any answers. And I felt like if I went to the grocery store, people were looking at me going, well, didn't you know? What could you have done? I just felt like eyes were everywhere, and they weren't. It's just the fear and the anxiety that comes with grief. But when I did begin, I had one friend, and she would text me every single morning. And a lot of times I would be like, Marie, I don't even have anything to say. Do not text me anymore. But she was so steady, and it was COVID. But she would invite me over, and we would distance on her porch. We're Southerners, and she, I just began giving her my honesty. She was the first one I really started kind of letting the fishing line out a little bit, and I would come away and go, why do I feel lighter? I shared some really horrible, difficult things. Why do I feel better? And that's when I began to understand that concept. Sharing our pain lessens its power.
And I think also it probably, or at least like in my own experience, it like seeing other people's reaction to it when they're like not blaming you, or they're not pointing a finger at you, or they've got your back, kind of makes you start to be like, oh, maybe I don't need to feel shame about this. Maybe I don't need to be as embarrassed. Like, you know what I mean? It kind of like starts to empower you a little bit, because a lot of that is in your head about like other people's reactions, right?
Our judgment of ourselves, the pressure and the hate we put on ourselves because we judge ourselves for all these things that we perceive of our failures, I think is so much bigger than how others are judging us.
Oh, totally.
You can be compassionate with yourself, which that's a really hard turn, but when you can learn to give yourself some grace and honor the journey you've been through, lighten it up a little bit. Yeah.
There's this amazing poem I love called On the Day You Read This by Lane Thomas. And there's a line in there that says, no one's really judging you when you walk into a room, and all they really want to know is if you're judging them. And I get goosebumps like every time.
Yes, I did too. That's powerful.
And it's so true. And I try to keep that in mind, even about like other people's opinions too, right? Because we're all like building stuff up. We're all worrying about ourselves, right? Like no one's really out there like worrying about you, like thinking about you or trying to hurt you.
Right.
Everyone's just wrapped up in their own stuff.
100%.
And then we're taking it personally, like, oh, how does it affect me?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. You are amazing. I am so grateful you came on the show. So grateful we got connected. I'm sure people want to know how they can connect with you. So do you live on the internet somewhere? Like what's your
Yeah.
handle? What's where they find their
Yeah.
book?
Thank you. And you're amazing too. Absolutely amazing. I love your story. I'm gonna switch roles with you and have you on my podcast.
Yeah, I
Hopefully.
love that.
So the name of the podcast is the Soul Talks podcast. That's how you can find it, and it's on Apple Podcast. You can Apple Podcast, Spotify, and you can view it on YouTube. It's filmed as a show, and then my website is The Soul Talks with Theresa. So you can take a look there and know a little bit more about me and access all of the episodes as well.
Amazing. And all of that will be linked in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. And, I'm sure it's equal parts difficult to keep talking about, but I hope it also, gives the pain a little bit less power, like we were talking. And I know that it's helping others without a doubt. And you know that already too, but coming on these other shows, I know is helping others too. So
Your energy on your show is one of, it's very gracious, and you invited in my vulnerability. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. And if you are listening and there's someone in your life you think could really use this, please send it to them. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. Let's help lift humanity up. And I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful rest of your day.